Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Construction Over Coffee. I'm your host, Jeff Raymond from Raymond Search Group. And today I have Justin Kasper from Kasper Electric. Justin is based down in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Justin is the faith-based leader at Kasper Electric, and he is dedicated to improving the quality of life for everyone that he comes into contact with. He is husband to his beautiful wife, Jessica, father to the fantastic four, Mason, Emma, Landon, and Addison, and the proud owner of Kasper Electric. He's a second-generation electrician, learning from his father, the founder, Jay Kasper, since the age of 13. Now, over 20 years later, he aims to use Kasper Electric as a platform to increase the quality of life for the families that it employs, while raising the standard of service in the electrical trade so that he can improve the experience that customers have. 3 values, EGO, excellent, growth, and others. Without further ado, Justin, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity. And
Awesome.
You know what? I have to make a quick correction. And people that I haven't seen in a couple of years will go, "Hey, how's it going?" And the next question is, "How many kids do you have?" So since that bio was written on the website, I actually have a fifth. She's an infant, and her name is Isla. But yeah, we have 5 now, and hopefully the next time we talk, I don't have to correct you at all. We're not trying to have any more, but well, I love my wife.
Well, congrats on number 5, Isla.
Thanks.
All right. So we got quite a bit to cover today. Let's start with, how did you get into the industry?
Well, some would say I was born into it. I tried to get out of it, and whether it's fate or God or bad choices on my end, I ended up having to call my dad after a failed partnership in a different industry. I was 20 and called him. I remember it was December, and I called him and said, "Hey, Dad, I need a job." He's like, "What happened?" I said, "Well, that's a longer story." And I was probably digging a ditch the next day. And, that's the history of how I got in, or maybe you would be able to title it how I couldn't get out of it. But, great role model and really a great backup plan, I guess you would say. And it's been a fantastic plan A from that point forward.
Okay. That's an interesting way of getting into it. Some enter by choice, others enter by chance.
Yeah,
Maybe yours was a little bit of both.
exactly.
So since you joined the team back in 2003, it's been an interesting 18 years, I can imagine. What has that journey been like from 2003 to present?
Well, a lot of ditch digging from the first day, like I said. I was just an apprentice, if you will. Went through the school system that's here in South Florida. Now the Independent Electrical Contractors Association runs the apprenticeship. And, 4-year apprenticeship program, just hustling 40, 50, 60 hours a week, learning as much as I could in the trade. My dad had a fairly small organization, probably 8 to 12 guys in all. So, some good guys to learn from and mentor me. I got the opportunity through some connections at another general contracting firm that my dad didn't previously do work with, to bid some work. They asked me to. I asked my dad if he'd give me the opportunity to estimate, and having only the understanding of running some small work myself, maybe a few years in, actually started estimating. I remember the first day I sold a $40,000 job. It was so exciting, exhilarating,
Wow.
and at the same time, extremely scary, probably for my dad more than anybody.
Sure.
But it ended up, when you're running your own projects that you estimate, you really find a way to make it happen. And so I was estimating, project management, and most of the time for the first few years, doing all of the work myself. So small projects turn into bigger projects, small opportunities turn into bigger opportunities. And really the growth that happened there is due to my dad's understanding that, the idea of failing forward, he's going to learn one way or another. One of the biggest things that I take away from my dad, he has a lot of sayings, as most dads do.
Right.
But the one that stuck with me is, you're going to pay for your education one way or another. And he's been right. Sometimes I go through schooling or, different classes, college. Sometimes it's just what happens out there in the field in real life. And as I got better and more comfortable, we really started growing, not in the commercial and residential sales, but I then took over the service department and grew the service department from 1 to maybe 3 technicians. And at that point, I'm probably 25 and asking if my dad would consider, selling to me. He was at the point where he wished he had somebody that he could. And in the same thought of, failing forward, we started talking about what that looked like, and an exit strategy formed. We executed that 7 years ago. He's been retired now. And we currently have about 120 employees. We are one of the fastest growing electrical contracting and service companies in the nation. We've been recognized as the world's greatest electrician on ION's television, World's Greatest. And, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of growth. So to answer your question, it's just been a lot of failing forward, a lot of great successes, a lot of, learn from failures, and a lot of growth.
Wow. What a story. Oof. Any big plans on the horizon for the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, the next 5 to 10 years is an interesting thought. They say, 2020, we just came out of 2020, and I wish we all had 2020 vision of what the next 5 or 10 years looks like, but it threw a fairly large wrench in everything for a solid 12 to 16 months, especially in the service industry, walking into people's homes with an epidemic. But we in South Florida are experiencing fantastic growth. It will initially come from the influx of all the people. So luckily we do large custom homes, not necessarily always large, but we anticipate and have already seen a massive influx of requests. So what we're trying to do in the next few years is just, instead of go after every opportunity, is really make sure that we're anchoring ourselves with our current clientele base, which is the general contractors that we're serving currently, as they are trying to expand their abilities to serve their customer base that is growing significantly. And 2 to 3 years from that, a lot of the industrial and commercial infrastructure to support that is going to be happening. And luckily we have a fairly large, it's actually our largest division, commercial division. So, right now it's a lot of homes. We're still steady with a lot of the commercial stuff with the customer base that we've had for a very long time. And with all of that growth, I imagine our service department will continue to raise the bar, set the bar, and stay in the forefront of most of the current customer base, and have the opportunity because of that to serve the new customer base that's coming up. So the 5-year projections are poised for steady growth. And I say steady growth because, like I said, we've had a lot of growth, sometimes too much growth. In fact, 2020, 2019 was more growth than we really even wanted. So it's just a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity to step into our mission, which is improving the quality of lives of the families that we employ. So I hope to have the right team and be able to execute on that.
Now, talk a little bit more about the mission of improving the lives of people you employ, because we hear employers talk about that a lot, but it's always good to hear how specifically Kasper Electric is doing that.
So the very first thing that we do with regards to employees or the families who employ quality of life is, the benefit package. We're always looking every year when we sit down for budgets. I mean, even if it wasn't a fantastic year, which 2020 wasn't, we're still looking to improve our benefits package one way or another. I look back at one year, and this has only happened once in my time frame, and I don't know that my dad would ever recall this, but our either auto or health policy actually went down in cost. And instead of the idea of, hey, we're gonna pocket this, which we very well could have, and you know, a lot of people would say that's our right to do so. Our vice president of leadership said, hey, you know, how can we use this? It's already in the budget. It's not impacting bottom line in a negative or positive way. Currently, it could be in a positive way, but I said, you know what? You know, our bottom line is people. So we added a life insurance policy to the health policy with the extra savings. So there's a $10,000 life insurance policy. Until this year, we hadn't had anyone pass away. Luckily, it wasn't in the field or anything, but we've had an employee pass away unexpectedly, and they've had the opportunity to, you know, use that $10,000 life policy to pay for funeral expenses and just help the family. So it didn't benefit them. And that's why we say we want to improve the quality of lives of the families that we employ, because it's not just the employee, it's the family that we're trying to employ here. And another way we do that is, you know, when we have company events or picnics, parties, whatever that is, it's always very family friendly, because I want to see, you know, the missus to the mister, the kids. I want to understand what the family element looks like, because, you know, we want to step into that no matter how we can.
That's great. That's awesome to hear. And the reviews that I've read about the company online from both employees and from contractors and from your customers certainly reflect, I think, that commitment there. The industry you're in is a really interesting one. Tell us something that is unique to what you do that people on the outside wouldn't necessarily know.
So the electrical industry is a tough industry. There's a lot of competition. You know, it's evolved. It's taken a lot of ongoing training and education. We are in a construction site. We're usually the very first person on the job because it's hard to build something without power. So whether it's demolition or safe off of something that has to be demoed, or you know, just getting, you know, site light for security purposes and power to the contractor's trailer or whatever that may be, just for the tools that are necessary to start cutting the form boards, to the end of the job where we're getting a power release and starting to, you know, turn all those main switches on. You know, we are one of the leaders in the trade. So that's once the job gets going, but the electrical portion of the project is also one of the most integral parts. In South Florida, many would say it's the AC as it gets to 100 degrees or so, but you know, we are not only part of the installation team, but we have to be part of the design team. We have to be part of the, you know, in the job leadership team. We're interacting with every trade, because every trade, you know, needs to participate with the electrician usually in one way or another, whether it's, you know, getting them the power to do what they need to do, or, you know, they're talking about sealing up openings, installing windows. You can't install the windows until we have the temporary power up for the AC. So, you know, things can be, you know, climate controlled. So, you know, we're kind of the leader on the construction side. And then on the service side, it's one of those things that, you know, if you don't have electricity, it's always an emergency. So, right. You know, it's just one of those things that people don't think about until they actually need. So having a good electrician, whether you're a contractor or a homeowner, is sometimes not thought of until it's too late. But we appreciate the opportunity because of the size that we are to be able to jump when people really need us. So, you know, that's the one thing that's difficult, is just being able to jump when everybody's needed, and serve those customers with excellence in short time frames, or, you know, fires or whatever it may be that we have to hurdle.
In what you do, you obviously have an opportunity to impact the lives of many folks, employees, folks you work with, customers. What do you love about what you do?
I love what we do. The thing I like the most about what we do is the people interaction. I don't know if I would even identify myself as an electrician as much as a friend. If I can't have fun doing what I'm doing, I'm not interested in even trying. And if you aren't with the right people, whether it's customers, employees, contractors that you're working for, it's hard to have fun. So, identifying and partnering with the right people, serving the right customers, which sometimes we have to love customers out the door. If my team can't feel good about serving someone, sometimes we say we're going to serve the hell out of them. And that's more of the idea of, we're all sinners, but some days we have off days and we're going to serve that out of you. And sometimes we just can't, some people are, unpleasable, but whether it's the people that we're in the trenches with or the people that we're serving, it's just identifying the right people. And, over 43 years now, we've had the ability to do that. And it's a great thing to have the ability to be selective on the people that we're hiring, because our culture means a lot to us. So, hiring the wrong person can impact the culture negatively way faster than hiring the right person and having them partner with us and continuing to build on that positive culture. So the people are definitely the interaction, the ability to not be just business. I think that's an excuse for moral people to do immoral things. Let's call it just business. This isn't just business. This is very personal for all of us. And that's what I love the most about, anything that we do or touch here at Kasper Electric.
Wow. The construction industry as a whole faces a lot of challenges through the nature of what it does. It's a very people project focused industry. What are some of the unique challenges that, outside of things like competition, pricing, trying to please everyone, what is very unique to what it is that you do? What are some of those challenges?
So I don't think our challenges are unique to the electrical trade or construction in general. Construction maybe, and it goes back to the same thing that I love so much. It's the people. They're also the biggest problem, whether they're the customer or the employee. So the challenges that we have in the construction industry, specific to the electrical industry, have actually, been some of the things that boom in this epidemic. You see Amazon going nuts. Generators can be purchased almost at the same price as I'm purchasing from my vendor. There's really no coverage there to not force. You just want to, drive the customer base to buy from someone who is going to verify that it's the correct thing, make sure that they honor and follow through with any warranties. And really that was put into place, not just for to increase profit levels. It's really to improve the experience. So if you were to call Kasper Electric and say, hey, we'd like you to do this job, whether it be hang a ceiling fan or build my 5-story hotel, but we're going to provide all of the material. Yes, can it be done? Absolutely. But we do this every day. So making sure the numbers are right on every model and part to make sure that this is all going to piece together and work. That's our job. That's part of our job. And yes, we would love the opportunity to do that. When you take that away, we don't have control. So when things are coming later than they should and they're out of sequence, it impacts the progress of your job. If you buy something that is 240 volts and we're supposed to have 120 volts, we would have caught that. And if we didn't, we would be stepping into it to make sure it's right at no cost to you. But now a lot of the times you buy something as a customer, an end user, we get there to install it or whatever the case may be. And it's incorrect because you're not an electrician. We feel terrible having to charge you for that travel time and that hour that we tried to do something or unpackage something and then have to reschedule to come back. So that's one of the more difficult things in construction, or the end user thinks that going around the middleman is actually impacting his bottom line, his or her bottom line positively, when in many cases it's impacting everybody's bottom line negatively.
So early on in the pandemic, it was definitely a challenge for a lot of companies to adjust. What was that like early on? What adjustments did you make, and how has that changed the way you've done business since?
So one of the most immediate changes that the pandemic forced us to do was to think of how we were going to work remotely. We went from desktop versions and VPNs to try to work remotely to cloud-based systems. So our service department was previously cloud-based, which was a blessing. Unfortunately, the service department took the most immediate hit. Luckily, we're diversified enough to where we can take our service technicians, which at the time we may have had 9 or 10, and push 75% of those guys out to the field, whether they're working on commercial or residential projects. But really having the ability to be flexible into where we are working, use technology to walk job sites. Most of the electrical contractors have job walkthroughs with the general contractors, specifically on a physical site prior to bidding. So those went away. So now we're doing Zoom walkthroughs, which we still do today, and it actually saves time for everybody. So whether it's a video walkthrough like you would see on maybe a home sale, it's also like that on a general contractor's walkthrough. And then, some of the other things that we had to do for adaptations is really consider our customer, especially on the service side, that we're walking into Mrs. Jones' house, who knows if she's scared of this pandemic. But some of the things that have stuck with us are, making sure that we're always, washing our hands, asking the customer what their comfort level was, because we previously just assumed everyone was okay with our current practices. So just better communication, more cloud-based, more access from multiple points. Our estimating software, our estimating team can estimate in India if they wanted to. So it's really been a lot of opportunities to improve, as almost every industry I'm sure has seen. The electrical industry is no different. We had to adapt, and some things stuck, some things didn't.
We've seen clients and other companies do everything from adopting Zoom as much as possible. A big thing was switching from the traditional paper filing system to DocuSign, PandaDoc. We found customers got really serious about the CRM systems they're using. Salesforce is a big one. And, in our last interview, I spoke with a gentleman, Brian Rist of StormSmart down in Florida. He mentioned that they were able to automate a lot of the sales follow-up and customer service touch points with email, automated text reminders, and they were able to just save a ton of time. So I'm curious, has Kasper switched over to mostly electronic? Were you mostly electronic before? Are you still paper and pen?
So prior to the epidemic, and we've always been fairly forward thinking. I'll give you an idea of where we came from. When I first came into the office, one of our estimating systems ran off of a floppy disk, and I'm not talking 30 years ago.
An actual floppy disk.
I'm talking 10 years ago. Yes, and dot matrix printers. I wish we didn't throw away some of this stuff. I'm sure the Smithsonian would have paid big money for it. It was still working. But since I purchased the organization, that we've been very much technology-based, cloud-based as much as possible. But within the time frame of the last 12 months with the epidemic, the estimating system, though it was top of the line then, it wasn't cloud-based. And unfortunately for us, the electrical trade, if you take every part that we could potentially use on a job, it's usually more than all of the other trades parts added together. That's just how complex the electrical trade is.
Mhm.
Therefore, the estimating systems and softwares are extremely large. So we just recently went to on-screen takeoff and cloud-based, which gives us the ability to estimate a $20 million project really anywhere in the world. We were already doing a lot of the CRM through a cloud-based organization called Service Titan that does all of our scheduling, incoming calls, follow-up. But we think that previously people enjoyed the human element, and we have decided not to automate a lot of those things because I think if anyone's like me, I still like hearing Michelle's voice on the other side of the phone opposed to a text or email follow-up. We are a family organization and we want to still keep it very personal. So we have not opted to go that far, if you will. And in 5 years from now, we'll see if that works or not.
Yeah, yeah, that's the beauty of each business. Everything is so different, and what works for some may not work for others, but you can get similar results with or without the changes.
Yeah.
One thing we've seen that hasn't changed over the years, and it seems almost no amount of technology can fix or automate this, is the human element that comes into hiring. Construction companies as a whole have, I think, more than ever the last year really struggled with finding the right people. How has that been for you, and what do you see moving forward?
So whether it was God or karma or just dumb luck, Kasper Electric started an organization called Kasper Careers. And we started our own recruiting and staffing organization about 2 years ago. So when we went from 70 employees to 120, had we not geared up for that a year prior, I don't know what the result would have looked like, but I don't even want to think about it, because you're right. It's very difficult finding good talent with either the right experience, the right culture fit. There's a lot of things that go into our hiring process, but luckily we were able to turn up the volume of applicants way before we actually needed them. And in one way, we're actually serving the rest of our competitors, if you will, because we're helping them at the same time. So we have many of our other competitors in our area that are sending us what they're looking for, and we're fulfilling those orders for them at a very low cost. But the reality is it's serving Kasper Electric, it's serving Current Connections, it's serving electrical contracting consulting services incorporated, a lot of these guys in our area. So kind of the idea of better together. So we're pulling our money together through Kasper Careers and getting a larger volume of incoming talent. And we're actually not even targeting our current area. We're targeting Northeast, Midwest. We've got quite a few that are coming over from Texas. We've built out a residential suite on one of our properties with 2 bunk beds, just for people that are flying in for interviews, so they don't have to, they can stay, on property, if you will. Or, if they're interviewing from, somewhere they're driving, or they're doing a 1 week, field interview is what we would call it, where they're actually showing that they can do what they say they're going to do. But the other side of that thing of employees hiring is not only finding the right people, but once you find them, keeping them. Because in the boom that we're having right now, there are so many guys that are offering, more than what somebody should make. And I'm not ever against somebody making more money. I am absolutely for that. But if it's not sustainable, it's actually hurting that person, because if the supply and demand curve goes in the opposite direction and you are of a level of an apprentice 2 or a second or third year apprentice making too much money, it really makes you unhireable for quite some time until you bring your level of experience or education up. And that's the other side of things, is just training people, going alongside your current employer and saying, hey, I want I want to be, a foreman one day, and your employer, whether it's Kasper Electric or one of these other contractors, going, hey, let's get you into school, let's get you trained properly. Sometimes these jobs and the demand, if your sales are too much, you're throwing what they call pulses at your projects and not really partnering with your employees for long-term hire to retire relationships. So, employees are problematic, but unfortunately, the employers are creating half of the problems at the same time.
Agreed. We coach our clients on something very similar, especially now, is there is a tendency to want to overcomp, to feel they have to stay competitive, to not lose people to other opportunities. And compensation is important, but there's a lot that goes into a career change or a career decision. The company, the team you're working with, the relationship with the individual that is employing you, missions, goals, compensation, benefits, career path, those are many things. So we're encouraging clients right now, stay competitive, be competitive, do the highest and best you can, but don't create unrealistic expectations. Don't create something that's unsustainable. Not only you're hurting them, but you're hurting that person if they re-enter the market.
Yeah.
In some markets right now, we're seeing positions comp anywhere from 20 to 50% above the max.
Yep.
And that is, some markets are harder hit than others, but it's not sustainable. Folks that should be making 80 to 100,000 a year, depending on the position, location, we're seeing go for 130 to 150.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that may seem fine now, but as things normalize, 10 times out of 10, that person's likely the first one to have their wages reduced or their position eliminated if it
Yep.
comes down to it. So it's important to be practical, pragmatic, and also think ahead when it comes to these things. Now, you did highlight something common across all areas of construction, and that's finding the right people. It's hard. It was hard to do before. It's harder to do since 2020. What are some things that you, your company, and your recruiting and staffing firm do that helps you find these people and also successfully recruit them?
Well, as a technical millennial, we embrace, the person we're looking for, the 20 to 30-year-old male for the most part. We do have a couple females that work with us, and they're awesome. I love it. But we understand our target market, and we're trying to, I guess it's not fake because it really is who we are. We are very forward thinking in our benefits, the way that we work as far as our accountability processes, our growth processes, and we communicate it pretty well, in my opinion. We have a couple people here on staff that do our media, whether it's audio or video. We have quite a few videos on our website where people can kind of get an idea of what the culture feels like before even stepping foot or even hitting apply. But we're also trying to make it easy for them too, because if I've got to send in or email a resume and go back and forth, setting up phone calls and not being able to get a feel for what the organization looks or feels or smells like, it's difficult for somebody to make that decision when we're gonna give it to you right off the bat. We're gonna send you some videos of what it means to be a Kasper employee, what some of the benefits are, showing the benefit package as a benefits package, not just a salary, and really trying to paint the whole picture where someone could, at a quick glance, get a decent understanding. A lot of people make these decisions on employment based on the few first interactions, whether they're walking into my office, which I had somebody in the office today that's like, what are you guys, a tech startup? We got the cornhole boards out and some putting greens and fun stuff like that. And yeah, it's a little bit of fluff, but some of the guys, enjoy it. It speaks to the idea of we're trying to have fun here. The pictures that are on the walls in most of the rooms that we're doing the interviews, they're employees, they're not projects,
Right.
because we are about our people. So just having the ability to communicate that It's one thing to get them to come to the website or, reply to an ad. It's another thing to then convert. So I think, some people may think I can throw some money at this and get guys to apply, but it's the conversion rate that really makes everything.
Great, great. And we're finding that more and more employees care about something other than just a paycheck. You have to pay the bills. There's a certain standard of living that one is accustomed to depending on what they do. But outside of that, things like work-life balance, things like cornhole, putting green, things that build camaraderie amongst team, and places where you feel welcome and you can have fun and be more than just a number. Those are really important things. I get what over the next couple of years, what is Kasper going to do to continue to differentiate itself as an ideal place of employment in the electrical industry?
So the most exciting thing we have coming up is something we have not coined a term for, but somebody threw out KU, like Kasper University. Mm-hmm. In the electrical trade and a lot of trades in general, you get in, there has been, based on hundreds of years, this idea of apprenticeship. Some people embrace it, some people don't. There are so many opportunities in the electrical field, whether it's electrical engineering, electronics, communication, low voltage. In a hospital setting alone, there are so many systems that are in there that somebody who is trained in the electrical field is installing, maintaining, implementing, programming. There are probably 20 to 30 that I could just rattle off to you right now that we don't even do. But if we're going to be a quality of life organization, we need to identify those avenues, if you will. And then I want to start creating a curriculum. And we're not going to be creating a curriculum that is necessarily accredited, Kasper University. This is our stuff. I have no problem taking somebody else's material as long as they're okay with it, or whether we pay for it or get access to it. And if somebody wants to be an engineer, they could walk in our office in a few months' time and understand, I want to be an electrical engineer. Well, here's how Kasper is going to partner with you. We don't actually do engineering currently, but you still should go through a 4-year apprenticeship so you understand the practicality of electrical, because when you start engineering something without understanding the practicality and just the numbers, we as electrical installers, find it problematic. So 4 years of an apprenticeship, then there's another 4 to 6 years of engineering. And there's a school that's very close by that has that night class or 1 day a week class. But painting the picture of the road that you want to be on and how we're going to partner with you until you get there is what I think we're going to be doing in the very near future, that a lot of people are going to be interested in, because there's a lot of fly by the seat of your pants and hope your employer currently at least sends you to the apprenticeship program. And then you get out, you're a journeyman electrician. Now what? Do I continue in the industrial? Do I continue in the commercial? Do I get into the residential? Do I want to be a project manager? Do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to be an estimator? Do I want to be an office manager? Do I want to run the service division? Do I want to get into fire alarm? Without those answered with your current employer, it's kind of like a creek without a paddle, if you will. So it's wherever the flow will take you. So we want to have the ability to help you steer and navigate that. And I think that's what's going to help us in the near future, not only acquire, but retain a lot of the great culture fit employees that we're hoping to have.
Training is definitely one of the most important things a company can do. I think where smaller and mid-sized firms get wrapped up is they see large companies that tend to hire the best, have the best, and that may or may not always be true. But there is a general consensus that larger companies, on average, tend to be able to hire the best, train the best, and retain the best. Parts of that may be bigger budgets, bigger brand name, but what gets most often overlooked is training. Larger companies compared to small companies, tend to invest in their people far more, far often, and far earlier on than smaller companies. And I think, if you're an individual in that trade, and you're looking at two companies with everything is similar, but one company has a vastly better training and retention program, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to go with that company. And I think training is a really underutilized and untapped opportunity for firms to stay competitive, not only for hiring the right people, but for improving their margins, getting better people, keeping injury levels down, safety and compliance levels up. It's really an overlooked opportunity for a lot of companies.
Unfortunately, I think it's because it's unquantifiable many times, and people like to understand the return on investment, if you will. And at Kasper Electric, we understand what's unquantifiable, but whether it's, whether we can say, hey, we've gone 7 years without a safety event. Had we not done that training, could it still be the same 7? It's unquantifiable. Nobody knows, but we still know that by doing that safety training, we're living our mission. Because the last thing I want to do is have somebody have an injury, and I mean that's the first thing you could do to negatively impact somebody's quality of life. So it's a lot of those unquantifiables that most people can't wrap their head around because they're thinking of the numbers. But some of the greatest things in life have nothing to do with numbers.
Right. One thing that's really interesting about the field of construction and all the specialties and subspecialties of it is that it often is overlooked as a viable career path. And growing up with us being from a similar generation and era, very infrequently did someone hear construction is a great industry, you should do it. Most of the time, kids, as they're going through school, are told, go to college, get a degree, be an engineer, be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. It's not go to school, be a project manager for a general contractor, go to school, be an electrician, get in the trades. For years, that was a viable option. And then 30, 40 years ago, something shifted. And while college is a great option for a lot of people, it's not for everyone. So in helping employers get over the skills gap and I think fixing the lack of supply of good folks, I think a lot of that starts in our industry at a young age. And it starts with individuals who are in that industry, talking to their families, talking to their children, talking to their friends, and telling them, look, this is a great industry. I'm biased. I think it's the greatest industry in the world, but it's not for everyone. But for the people it is for, give them that option early. Don't let them go through school, come out with massive amounts of debt, a degree they don't want to use, doing a job they hate, and say, by the way, you should really look at doing this. But give them options when they're younger. Give them options to work with their hands to get out. So often when you ask people, what do you think construction workers do, or whatever, the image in the head is of a guy or girl hitting a nail with a hammer or screwing something in, and that's it. And there's hundreds of types of jobs across all different industries in construction, but it's on us to educate and empower the next generation of kids to view that as a real option.
Yeah, I agree. We had this idea of a C+ education, and the C+ wasn't the grade average that of the individual that we're looking for. In fact, we always want the guys that are guys or girls that are willing to put out the best effort. Some people aren't made for school. I was a great test taker. I had great grades, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure what I can apply today from some of those A's. Some of the more, trying education times in my life were in the field, learning, real life experiences and real life, mottos, if you will, and understanding what the value of hard work really looks like. But the C+, idea came from cash flow positive, C plus. The idea you alluded to of, driving yourself into debt, getting out, not having the ability. I had a very good friend, had a great business degree that ended up changing tires for years. And while supply and demand, definitely has a lot to do with college versus, career in the trades. Right now in South Florida, the price tag that you can make or demand even is going up. But regardless of supply and demand, the idea of not having debt, actually having your employer probably pay for your education. So not only debt free, but you're making money while your employer's paying for your education. And then if you find the right one, after you get out of that 4-year apprenticeship, having the ability to grow into project management or estimating, maybe starting your own organization. We actually launched, I think, 4 other electrical contractors in the year of 2020 out of Kasper Electric, and we partnered with them from start to finish. But the idea is blue collar worker, like you're talking about, hitting the nail, digging a ditch, but that's just the beginning. But regardless, you're at least out of debt and have a plethora of opportunity in front of you. So I agree. I think even our school system in Palm Beach County right now is talking about trade education, understanding that there are great and viable options for a lot of the kids in our community to start looking forward to early. We don't think anything's too early. We've gone into elementary schools and expressed what it is to be an electrician to a bunch of 5th graders. We do a lot of stuff in a lot of the middle schools and high schools. But I'm excited for the open-minded kids that we have coming up that want to have the ability to work with their hands, work outside, get sweaty, earn a great living, start a great career, and navigate the waters that are opportunity in the construction trade.
Those are awesome points. Something we tend to remind people too is when you look at different industries, manufacturing, technology, certain professional services come to mind. Those are all high-paying, good jobs, but the risk of automation remains very high. If you can sit and program at a computer in Fort Myers, Florida, you can sit and do that in Seattle. You can do that in Asia Pacific. You can do it in Europe. You can do it anywhere. And I think companies will continue that trend of trying to outsource as much as possible for paying less money, maximizing profits. But one thing about the construction industry and similar industries is it's really difficult to outsource a building somewhere else. You can't, you're not going to ship a single family home to another country and ship it back. I mean, I hate using the word, it is outsource proof, but the likelihood of the careers in this industry being lost to automation or to outsourced firms is, I think, minimal. In fact, one story I like to allude to is early on in the pandemic, the belief was that companies will go remote, especially in tech. I'm speaking from tech here for a moment. We have a tech division. And I remember speaking to a good friend of mine, individual that's in tech, and he said, remote is the greatest thing. I'm in tech. I think every company should be remote. I said, well, just be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. I don't know how that can end great for everybody. And we watched over the months as it became, well, if I'm a developer, for example, living in New York City, I'm used to commanding a certain type of wage. And if I'm an employer that's used to paying those folks and now everyone's remote, my curious mind goes, why don't I hire someone outside of New York City, but still in New York? They can then come into the office as needed, but I don't have to pay them NYC living wages. And okay, that worked. We're saving 20, 30% on wages. And then, well, New York's great, but the cost of living here is really high compared to somewhere like Alabama. Let's try someone in Alabama. Okay, well, now we're saving 50 or 60%. this is working really well. Let's just experiment and see what happens if we try a lower cost of living country. India, the Philippines, parts of Eastern Europe. And before you know it, in talking with this individual, it was, well, our entire department was laid off and our job was shipped to another country, essentially. And after hearing multiple stories like that, again, be careful what you wish for, it kind of points out to the fragility of certain industries. But again, it's really hard to outsource being an electrician, being a project manager, estimating jobs on site as needed. It's really hard to outsource that. So I think the construction industry, the demand for skilled workers is not going away, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I'll tell you the scariest thought. One of the scariest thoughts I had was when either Apple or Samsung or one of these guys, probably Apple, but came out with the wireless charger. So as a guy that has to connect things physically, when they started the idea of wireless, electricity, where it doesn't have to have a physical connection, was a little scary. But I'm hoping that they don't start lengthening that span in which they have the ability to charge something wirelessly. But you're absolutely right. The four walls that I'm sitting in had a physical interaction with multiple trades, and it could not be automated in this setting. I believe there are going to be some automations that will hit the smaller residential. I mean, you see it in a mobile home setting already, but I think they're going to actually have the ability to start 3D printing large scale sections soon. I can envision hotel rooms being manufactured by 3D printing for a portion of it. There are already organizations throughout the country that are actually making these rooms and shipping rooms, and they're actually just then being elevated and clicked into place. But an electrician still has to wire that, whether it's at that location. They're not shipping these things across seas. It's luckily too expensive to do that. So I believe the US will still have the ability to produce, labor units, maybe different areas of the country, like you would see the automotive industry and plants in certain areas. But there will always be a need for electricians to wire these things, because you can't pre-wire everything. But unfortunately, everybody is looking how to automate everybody out of a job, whether I agree with it or not. Unfortunately, if it impacts the price, I have to stay competitive with my pricing. But I will give you a great example. If people think we're crazy, we do all of our own payroll in-house. Anything that we can do in-house, we do in-house, because the idea of, we want to continue to produce jobs inside of an organization that does want to have a positive impact in your quality of life. So we won't outsource, even if it makes some financial sense, if we can justify an increase in quality of life. I don't know that the rest of the trade will buy into that, but I definitely agree with you. There are a lot of organizations and industries that have the ability to be automated. I'll leave you with one story. I'm over on Palm Beach Island, and on Palm Beach, there isn't a lot of parking. So previously, 10, 15 years ago, you'd have meter readers. And the meter lady was walking down the street with her gun, and she's clicking and making sure that they're getting the billing correct on all the homes. And we must have been working on a project nearby. And I say, "Hey, how are you?" She goes, "Great. Have you seen all these new digital meters that they're putting out? Aren't they awesome?" And my initial thought is, well, she doesn't realize that they're outsourcing that. So now there's a GPS, a satellite, that tags all the meters and has nobody reading them anymore. So we'll see what the future has. I'm hopeful that electricity won't go wireless, and we'll have the ability to continue to construct with our hands and continue to produce good paying, quality of life opportunities for many, many people to come.
Agreed. at some point, as the industry evolves and the technology within the industry evolves, the true players tend to evolve with it. My first thought when you said wireless charging is great, it's still going to need someone to troubleshoot and maintain and service it. In recruiting, over the years, we've seen the advent of job boards. Job boards were supposed to kill the recruiting industry. They have their place, but for the majority of organizations, it just gives you more unqualified folks quicker in larger volume. Internal recruiting was supposed to kill the recruiting industry. And we found that a lot of entry level, lower skilled things can typically be solved by in-house recruiting, and the very niche, very specialized recruiting that recruiters need to have specialized domain knowledge in, that doesn't make sense to hire one person to fill 1 or 2 jobs a year for. Recruiters in those industries tend to do well. And when you partner with the right internal folks, they become a partner, not a competition. But in our own industry over the years, we've seen technology and we've seen the promises of it will destroy this industry, it will destroy that. I think it will destroy the people who don't keep up with the times. And in your industry, I don't think that's any different. The joke in tech is at what point does it become robots managing other robots, right? We're seeing a lot of automation and printing in the modular market, where there's prefabbed or modular construction. That certainly is, but at the end of the day, someone still has to put the wiring in. They still have to do the rough in. They still have to put in the HVAC units and the plumbing. That certainly will not change. And there is a human touch in construction that I don't think is ever going away. We've noticed that most folks in this industry who have stuck around have done well and lasted. They've done a couple of things. One, they've had their share of successes. 2, they've had their share of failures. And 3, they've had a good mentor or good mentors along the way. So let's start with, what are some of your favorite stories of some successes you've had in your career?
Stories of success. I don't do a very good job celebrating the successes for myself. I move on to the next one so quickly. So, it was a big thing to be recognized by Ion Television's World's Greatest. They embraced the idea of our mission, and they put it on television. We've been recognized by national and local organizations for many years, being the leader in the electrical trade. And every time, it really is it's really a kind of a bar setter for us that, man, we don't feel that we're doing that well. So, just kind of like a notch in the belt, but where are we going next? We always look forward, which is part of why we succeed well, but we don't do a great job. I don't do a great job celebrating the successes. It's the people, that suffer from that. And I apologize to any of you guys watching. We should celebrate more because we have a lot of successes. But I was reading a book by Vern Harnish, I believe is his last name, but it's Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And we are considered a gazelle. So an organization that's growing more than 40% over a 3 to 4 year period every year. It's very difficult to do, very difficult to sustain. A lot of failures in there. Growth costs something. But once we hit our 5th year of averaging 50% growth and maintaining well, that was probably the time where I felt that's a huge success. We are in the top 1% of growing organizations in the country, and we're doing it well. And I don't know if failures is your next question, but that led right into the next thing, was a 100% growth. I would say maybe I got too comfortable or cocky, if you will. And while we could maintain 50% growth for 4 to 5 years in a row, we went for a 70% growth and hit 104, and it almost sank the ship. So a lot of successes, a lot of failures, and just grateful to still be here to share those successes and failures so that, others can either duplicate the successes or, hopefully have the opportunity to avoid the failure.
Wow. And for those who are wondering, what exactly defines growth? Is it revenue? Is it headcount? Is it something else?
So our industry is very much labor focused. It's hard to sell an electrical job without having an electrician on it. So it could be both, and they're very much equal parts. But it's the numbers specifically that I'm talking about are top line sales. That's where the 50% and the 104% come in. But if I were to look at that from an employee standpoint, I am certain that the year of our 104% growth, our employee count was significantly higher than 104% growth, which in turn was the major problem. We didn't have the ability to manage that growth, manage the hiring, manage the people, and produce at the same productivity level that we were per person for the last 5 years or greater than that.
Wow. And along the way of these ups, these downs, these roller coasters of highs and not so highs, who have been some of the people that have helped you along the way? And what are some of the biggest lessons you learned from them?
I am not in any way a self-made man, and nor I don't think there are any of those. So, great question. The people that I have in my life that have mentored me, number one would be my father. Second to God, but my father as an electrical contractor for so many years and starting. I always tell people that are looking to start the business, they look at Kasper Electric. Oh, you've done so many great things. And one, we've done some great things, but the reality is it's easy to go from 1 to 2 or even 1 to 5. That first step from 0 to 1 is by far the most difficult. My dad did it fantastically, provided a great opportunity for a lot of people over the years, and a good income for my sister and I. So my dad would be the most impactful person, especially when it comes to my character, my work ethic. Somebody who, though he didn't think like me, I would always consider his perspective because he had a larger perspective than I did as far as time was concerned. I have a lot of mentors in church, a lot of church groups, to be honest with you, that are business-minded mentors that are, questioning some of the things that I do, some of the motives that I have for doing it. A lot of gut checks, and I'm just grateful to have enough humility. I don't have enough, but have enough in those circumstances where I would actually take their opposition into consideration, and it's, I'm sure, impacted in a positive way a lot of the hurdles that we've hurdled. So, God, my dad, neighbors that have been friends that have seen the growth, and just really everybody. I think my buddy Scott, who owns a fantastic pool company in the area, he expressed one time when he was on a job, and it was one of the laborers, so probably one of the lowest paying guys on the job, saw something and made comment, and his comment actually had the best perspective on his current hurdle. And sometimes the guys in the ditch actually have the best perspective. So having an open mind to listen to anybody and everybody with regard to what a potential obstacle may be in front of you, I think that's a great attribute. A lot of people have a tough time, going to the front of the line, going, "Hey, I hear there's a problem. Help me understand what your perspective is on it." So that's one thing that I would say has been great, is not just one mentor, but hundreds of mentors, because we have the ability to learn from really anybody.
Wow. Along the way, have you had an opportunity to serve as a mentor to others? And if so, what kind of impact do you think you're having if you're doing that?
So I'm excited. I do some consulting for startup and fast-paced growth organizations, or people that want to improve their growth, mostly because they've seen our growth over time and they'll just ask. And I love to have the opportunity to share, not from a position of because I've done it and this worked, but for the most part, because I've tried this and it didn't. The idea of failing forward. And if I didn't share that with some of the people that at least have the know-how to understand that, I'd rather learn from somebody else's failure. If I didn't, I mean, I'd be doing a disservice to everybody. I think we all should have a little bit more, time in our busy days to stop and answer the simple questions of, how'd you do it? You want to do something, find somebody who's the best at it and start duplicating before you start carving out your own path. So I love the opportunity to speak into individuals and give them ideas. But I'll tell you, the best thing that I have to offer anybody on any of my consulting is not what I know, it's who I know. And that's really what has gotten me where I am today. My dad was born and raised here in Palm Beach County. My kids born and raised here. We're third generation. So we have a lot of connections of good quality people, whether it's accounting or, an engineer or an educator or, a connection in the municipality. With me, it's definitely not what I know. I don't think I ever have had any of the people that have come in for consultations, whether they're talking about growth or startup or whatever, leave with, wow, Justin gave me this nugget of knowledge. It's, wow, I've got a list of people that, are just good quality people to partner with in this venture. So I enjoy it. I enjoy that. I think I mentioned earlier, we had 4 organizations, electrical contractors, launch out of Kasper Electric this year. And they're all doing well. And part of our success we've identified this year is we're going to actually feel and manage the numbers that are coming out of Kasper Electric and follow them. Because, in 20 years from now, we'd love to have the opportunity to say, hey, here's 20 or 30 electrical contractors that have come out of Kasper Electric, and they're all doing really well, high moral values, serving the community. So, giving the knowledge that we have is how we've gotten here as a country, as humans. I mean, it's progress. So the more we share, I think the better we get together.
Great. Agreed. Now, in terms of, we talked about what do you see for the next 5-10 years, that was really hard to answer, obviously. But what do you see happening right now that you think is likely to persist? Either trends in the industry, things that you've started doing, things you've seen other folks start doing. What's going to stick around?
The thing I see the most that has changed over the last few years is a little bit of what we talked about previously, where, millennials want to be part of something bigger than just a paycheck. The payroll was the biggest driver 30, 40 years ago, with this mentality of, and I don't disagree with it, if I got to put food on the table, and that's an honorable thing to do. And it absolutely is. But now it's being paired with significance a little bit more, and calling, or, purpose, if you will. So I see a lot of the contractors, and we have a little bit better of a perspective because we have a recruiting and staffing organization that we run. So we understand a little bit more, because the volume is significant, that guys are coming through here looking for electrical. They could be looking for something that we don't even do, but we're also recruiting for other organizations. So we have a pretty high volume of people that are coming in here that are looking for those things, and the trade is starting to adapt. My dad grew up in that old school mentality of, hey, I pay you for 40 hours a week, and they're comfortable with their pay being the major factor. But when it comes to hiring and retaining, the purpose is now starting to overshadow the pay a little bit, as long as it's within range. So we're starting to see companies and organizations focus on culture and actually start to not pay into it, but give energy towards it, because they know and they've seen the result of a lack of focusing on what those unquantifiables were previously. So the millennial generation has definitely changed and forced the mindset of some of the previous generations to create a different type of environment. So I don't think that's going anywhere. I know the generation after that is going to be looking for the exact same thing. So it's interesting seeing the somewhat cutthroat, hard-headed construction trade have not necessarily a soft side, but a side that does get into the unquantifiable purpose, and organizations that are thinking we've got to give these guys something to work for bigger than just a paycheck.
You brought up a good point about construction industry being slow to adapt. We see a lot of industries adapt a lot quicker, and I think a couple reasons for that is when you have a company, for example, in tech, funded by outsiders, multiple decision makers, able to pivot quickly. But in talking with owners over the years, if they have to pay $30,000 to do something, they don't view it as our investors are covering that. There's multiple people kind of splitting the bill here. It's, hey, buddy, that $30,000 is coming out of my pocket. So in my mind, that's $30,000 less than I bring home. And that mentality, it's valid sometimes. I think it really gets people stuck in an old way of doing things. I mean, you think you can go into some offices and you see that some of them still are using everything on a disk, whether it's a floppy disk or a CD-ROM. Things like Bluetooth aren't even or cloud storage aren't even terms they're familiar with. Why do you think that the industry is so slow compared to others to change, to adapt, and to pivot as necessary?
So, well, I think the number one reason is profitability. Some of these tech industries they're fairly volatile, but at the same time, the higher the volatility, the higher the potential for profit. So, you watch these guys grow overnight sometimes, and even in publicly traded or non-publicly traded, like you said, sometimes there's investors. The potential for profit is so large that you're willing to take a little bit more of a gamble. If you were to go to a casino, and your odds are better here, that's where you would put your money for potential return. Surprisingly, construction, even though it's difficult, it's high liability, there's a much larger potential negative impact if something goes wrong, both physically and financially. The profits are driven down significantly by just competition. So there is a lot of competition. Therefore, the profits. If you have an organization, an electrical contracting organization who can get through multiple millions of dollars in commercial contracts in 1 year and manage a 20% bottom line profit, that's a pretty successful organization. Some of these tech guys or sales driven organizations, there's a much larger potential for profit. Therefore, a willingness to try something new. But when you have a steady profit margin by what we currently know, sometimes it's harder to justify taking a risk on something that may or may not pan out. I wish that wasn't the case, but unfortunately, I believe that is one of the reasons The other reason is, it's the old school mentality that you see. A lot of these guys want to be going to college and they want to be getting these, huge executive, positions. So the amount of people coming into the trade is somewhat less than what we need, especially here in South Florida. So right now the struggle is just manpower, and we're not even thinking of how do we grow from not necessarily bottom line or budget, but how do we grow in employees instead of how do we make this process better? How do we further the whether it's automation through customer service or whatever it may be. There are very few people that are willing to put the immediate need to the side and try something that is for something that could be paying off 2 to 3 years from now.
It's a really interesting point. In terms of that old school mentality, we do see that a lot where folks, they do it because it's what they've known and it's what's worked. My dad did it. My father's father did it. My friend did it this way. We've just done it this way for 30 years and it's not going to change. So I think getting folks out of that mindset is the first step. And that risk averse mentality is a great one. If you're in an industry where loss and failure is accepted, and in some industries, it's okay to lose money for years because someone will backstop you until you're profitable. You see it across a multitude of industries. In construction, if you're fronting the operation, if it's your livelihood there's really no tolerance for anything other than profitability. And, that has its place. And at some point, that mindset does become a hindrance towards getting to the next level. And we see it a lot when companies go from 10, 15, 20 employees, and when they want to make that jump to 50 employees or 50 to 100, right when they want to have that doubling event is where you get a lot of these hangups occurring. Now, with you being in staff and recruiting, you probably see a lot of the same things that we see. So we'll pivot to hiring for a minute. What are some of the most common mistakes you see companies make when it comes to hiring that you wish they didn't do?
I think the most common mistake for hiring is hiring fast. We try to hire slow, fire fast. And, firing could be for a multitude of reasons, whether it's not a culture fit or, they, express that they knew something they could do in the field, but they actually couldn't. But just hiring quickly. Sometimes we mentioned it earlier, you got to just put a pulse on the job. But the reality is we try to look at projects not in men, but, goals as far as stages of the project, whether it's, we're looking for, early power release by this date. Even the general contractors will try to say, hey, you need to put more men on the job. Well, instead, I'm asking them, please communicate what you want so that we can accomplish that. And I may work 2 different crews, to do it, whatever I have to do. But, I try to get creative, and I'd rather, employ our current people with overtime instead of hiring more people that could be just a 90-day position. We don't want to hire temporary positions. We only want to hire permanent positions. So hiring temporarily and in-house, I wish everyone else would just, a lot of things we do around here, especially because we have the staffing organization, is we'll staff anything that's less than a 120-day position. And if we don't identify that being sustainable, we're going to staff it. I'd rather pay short-term than, pay long-term for unemployment, if you will. And maybe hiring quick and had a bad culture fit. People don't realize the result of hiring the wrong person, nor do they not understand the result of not terminating that toxic person, if you will. So hiring quick is probably the biggest thing. It's like, hey, got a guy says he can do this, hire him. Do your due diligence, give him a field test, make sure he's a culture fit. make sure this is what he wants to do, understand where he wants to go. So hiring fast, I think, is the worst bad habit for contractors in a, unfortunately and fortunately, high demand market.
Those are good points. One thing we see over and over is people thinking they need someone that's different than who they actually need. And I'll unpack that statement. People think, employers often think they need somebody with A, B, C, D, and E experience. And they want someone coming from, this industry or that industry that's done ABC. But oftentimes that experience doesn't mean that that person is going to be successful at what they need to do. Someone may not have A through E on paper, but they have A, B, and E, and you can teach them C and D. And that's where things like culture fit. Where does that person want to go versus what career path can you offer? Those really come in. And the number one mistake we see is folks trying to check the boxes when it comes to making a hire. And it often leads them to make either impulsive or just flat out bad decisions. Sometimes they hire too fast. Sometimes they wait forever and hire the wrong person because they're in a wrong spot, which is hiring too fast. And other times they pass on the right people because mentally they're checking the boxes that don't need to be checked. So a lot of what we do is not just finding the right people, but helping people get unstuck, get out of their head, and get really clear on what they actually need someone to do.
Yeah,
I'm sure you see that all the time.
Yeah, we hire for culture, train for skill, because there, like you said, there are a lot of things that can be taught to the person that has the right, at least minimum background experience, but more importantly, the openness and willingness to learn new things. So as long as they have the right culture, we're going to entertain a lot of opportunity. We use the PI, the predictive index, as one of our assessments. Obviously, there are things that are very important to us that are not culturally driven. As an estimator, if I can identify and confirm in a simple interview that your attention to detail is fairly low, then, doesn't matter how much of a culture fit you are. But you're right, there's absolutely, a certain minimum requirement, but then the rest of it's, it's up for negotiation, it's up for education, it's up for training. And sometimes some of those experiences that you would have thought, wouldn't actually translate to productivity or creativeness or whatever that may be, the more perspectives you have on any one issue, the more pinpoint accurate you get on the solution. So I embrace and love the idea of people with different experiences coming in. So it's got to be open to it.
Two things we always tell people: you can't teach or force values, and you can't typically fix character flaws.
Yeah.
You find people with similar goals and values and avoid those with character flaws that conflict with what you believe in. You're 90% ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good opportunity for a company and a leader to get clear on what's important to me. What do I hold near and dear? What do I believe in? What are my values and virtues that I want to live by and run my business by, and hold myself and those who work for me accountable to? That often gets looked in the sake of profits.
Yeah. The other side of that is I have a lot of people that'll talk about employees that they have that are culture fits, that understand and value the values and different ethos, if you will, but they'll try to put a round peg in a square hole scenario. They may be great where they are. A great example is, guys in the field that are foremen. They try to bring them into project management or estimating. The idea is find someone's strengths and build on the strengths, opposed to, hey, this guy isn't the greatest at this, but we can work on it. So we also do, in addition to the PIs, the Gallup strength finders, and just understand what their strengths are, because I'm never going to be a great estimator. I'm the sales guy. Now, yes, I can do the estimating for a small period of time before I get totally bored, if you will. and start losing my attention to detail. But my strength is in front of the customer, coaching the guys, serving the team, the people aspect. I'm not in a cubicle and head down counting. So, just making sure that though they may be a great culture fit and understand the ethos and be part of the family, there's the right seat on the bus for everybody, and partnering with your employees to make sure that you're putting them there in a place to succeed. Because we have unfortunately failed in this. We've taken that guy that understands he's great at this and try to plug him into this, and sometimes you can't go back, and that's a disservice to that individual.
It is, and we see it all the time across different areas. Example here, just because we're great recruiters doesn't mean we're great accountants. We would never try to do our own taxes.
Yeah.
Hopefully most companies feel the same way. It's important to cross train, but let people do what they're good at. Give them opportunities to do it and get the heck out of their way.
Yeah.
Just because someone's a good estimator doesn't mean they'll be a great superintendent, and vice versa. And they probably don't want to do both.
Right.
Hire people, let them figure out what they're good at, let them do it, and give them more opportunities to do it.
Yeah.
So that is coming to the end of our time here, Justin. It's been great having you on the show. For those listening, watching, tell us how to reach you.
So easiest way is Kasper Electric on Facebook, kasperelectric.com, Kasper's with a K. And we'd love to connect, share any ideas, brainstorm, share our failures in any way we can improve your quality of life. We'd love the opportunity. I really appreciate you having me on. It was an honor. And I look forward to sharing in 5 years from now what we talked about today and seeing if we actually got there and what the challenges are at that time.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, Justin. Have a good one.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.